I traveled for 3 whole days to see my grandson, and my son told me it was a joke. The party already happened. Those words come out of my throat like broken glass, as if every syllable is a crumbling piece of my soul. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I'd tell anyone. And if for just a second this sounds familiar to you, I only ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. My name is Margaret Sanchez. I'm 63 years old, and I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Astoria, Queens, in the heart of New York City. The walls are stained with damp, but I've filled them with photographs of my family, photos where everyone is smiling, photos that now feel like stab wounds. Exactly 1 week ago, I was sitting in my green plastic chair, the only one left from my good furniture set, sipping my morning coffee from a chipped mug, when my phone rang. It was Artie, my 35-year-old son, who lives in a Chicago suburb with his wife, Jessica, and my grandson, Ethan. "Mom, how's it going?" he said, with that voice he uses when he needs something. "I'm fine, honey. Just here, watching my stories. I'm calling because next weekend is Ethan's birthday. He's turning 8. You remember?" My heart revved up like an old engine. Of course I remembered. I'd been counting the days since March. I had his present hidden in my closet. A green stuffed dinosaur that cost me 2 weeks of my Social Security check. I'd wrapped it in cellophane with a little red bow I saved from last Christmas. "Yes, honey. Are you having a party?" "Yep, a nice one. Ethan asked about you yesterday. He said, 'Is Grandma Maggie coming to blow out the candles with me?'" My eyes clouded over. It had been 8 months since I'd seen my grandson. The last time was a video call that cut off after 3 minutes because they were busy watching a movie. Since then, it was just sporadic text messages and photos Jessica would post on Facebook, where I watched Ethan grow up from a distance. "Did he really ask for me?" I said, feeling my voice crack. "Of course, Mom. You're his favorite grandma." His favorite grandma. Those words filled my chest with something like happiness, like finding a $20 bill in the pocket of an old pair of pants. "So, when's the party, honey?" "This Saturday, in the afternoon, around 4. I looked at my wall calendar, the one the local pharmacy gives out every year. It was Tuesday. That gave me 4 days to plan the most important trip of my life. "Okay, honey. I'll be there." "Really? Isn't that too far for you?" For my grandson, no distance is too far. When I hung up, I just sat in the kitchen, clutching the phone. For the first time in months, I felt needed, useful, as if my existence had a purpose beyond waiting for the $950 Social Security check that comes every month and watching reruns of Days of Our Lives. That same afternoon, I walked to Mr. Goldstein's pawn shop, 3 blocks from my apartment. From my purse, I took out a small cloth envelope where I kept my last treasures, a pair of 14-karat gold earrings that my late husband, Robert, gave me on our wedding day, 38 years ago. The only ones I hadn't sold yet. "How much for these, Mr. Goldstein?" I asked, feeling a lump form in my throat. The man examined them with his loupe. "They're nice, Margaret. I can give you $200 for them." $200. Almost exactly what the round-trip bus ticket to Chicago cost, plus a little extra for the gift and food for the road. "I'll take it," I said. Done. Leaving the shop with the bills in my hand, I felt a strange pang in my chest, as if I'd sold a little piece of Robert. But then I pictured Ethan's face when he saw me arrive at his party, and the pain turned into hope. The next 3 days were spent preparing as if I had an audience with the Pope. I washed my navy blue dress, the one I save for special occasions. I ironed my good wool shawl. I packed everything I thought I might need into my brown leather suitcase, the same one I used for my honeymoon in Niagara Falls. The wrapped dinosaur, 2 jars of homemade peanut brittle I'd made especially for Ethan, an extra blouse in case it got cold, and the framed photograph of me holding Artie when he was the same age my grandson is now. On Friday at 5 in the morning, I left my apartment and headed for the Port Authority bus terminal. The sky was still dark, and the streets smelled of damp pavement and sweet pastries from the bakeries just starting to open. I carried my suitcase in one hand and my bag with the ham sandwiches I'd made for the journey in the other. The bus to Chicago took 18 hours. 18 hours in a seat that made my back ache, watching the city skyline transform into the rolling hills of Pennsylvania. then the flat plains of Ohio and Indiana. But every mile that brought me closer to my grandson made me feel more alive. During the entire trip, I couldn't stop imagining the moment. Ethan running toward me with his arms wide open. Me, lifting him off the ground and spinning him around like I used to when he was smaller. His little hands clinging to my neck. His happy little boy laugh. The two of us, blowing out the candles together. I arrived in Chicago on Saturday at 2 in the afternoon. I still had 2 hours before the party. I took a taxi to Artie's house in a subdivision where all the houses looked the same, with perfect lawns and new cars in the driveways. I got out of the cab, smoothed out my dress, grabbed my suitcase, and walked to the front door. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. I rang the doorbell twice. The door opened, and there was Artie, with his hair uncombed, wearing basketball shorts and holding his phone. He saw me, and his face changed, as if he'd seen a ghost, but not a beloved ghost, an annoying one. "What are you doing here, Mom?" Those 5 words hit me like a bucket of ice water. "What are you doing here, Mom?" It wasn't a greeting. It was a reproach, as if my presence was an inconvenience, a miscalculation he hadn't factored into his perfect plans. "I came for Ethan's party, honey," I said, trying to hold the smile I'd been practicing the whole trip. "You told me it was today, at 4. Artie just stood there in the doorway, not inviting me in. Behind him, I could hear the TV on and the sounds of children playing. His house smelled clean, like those expensive air fresheners they sell in fancy grocery stores. The complete opposite of my apartment, which smells of damp and reheated food. "Didn't you think it might be a joke?" he said, and then let out a laugh, but it wasn't a happy laugh. It was one of those dry, sharp laughs that spit contempt. "The party was yesterday, Mom. It was just for his school friends and close family." The words pierced me like shards of glass. It was yesterday, just for close family. And what was I? An old piece of furniture? An unwanted visitor? "What do you mean it was yesterday?" I asked, feeling my voice break. "Artie, I traveled for 2 days to be here. I sold my earrings. Your father's earrings." "Nobody asked you to come, Mom," he replied, not even looking me in the eye. His gaze was fixed on his phone, as if it were more important than my devastated face. "You always dramatize everything. And next time, call before you show up. Don't just appear like you still live here." I stood there, with my suitcase in one hand and my bag in the other, feeling my world collapse piece by piece. My knees trembled. The air grew thick, as if I were breathing water instead of oxygen. It was like being in a tunnel where the sound was distorted and the light was getting smaller and smaller. Just then, from behind Artie, my grandson appeared. Ethan, my little treasure. He was wearing a gold cardboard crown that said "Birthday Boy" and a new Spider-Man t-shirt. His dark eyes, just like mine, looked at me for 2 seconds. "Ethan!" I cried out, crouching down to his level. "My beautiful grandson! Happy birthday!" But he didn't run to me. He didn't give me a hug. He didn't even smile. He just looked at me as if I were a stranger and kept running toward the backyard, where I could hear music and the laughter of other children. Not a "Hi, Grandma." Not a "Glad you came." Nothing. I stayed crouched there, my arms extended into emptiness, feeling like the most ridiculous woman in the world. A foolish old woman who had mistaken love for obligation, who had believed that sweet words over the phone meant something real. "Hey, who is it?" I heard a woman's voice from inside. It was Jessica, my daughter-in-law. She came out drying her hands on a kitchen towel, dressed in designer jeans and a white blouse that probably cost more than 2 months of my rent. "It's my mom," Artie told her, as if apologizing for a stain on the carpet. "She just showed up." "Oh no," Jessica said, her face twisting into a poorly disguised mask of annoyance. "Hello, Mrs. Sanchez. We didn't know you were coming. The party's over." Mrs. Sanchez. Not even Mom or Ethan's grandma, as if I were the cleaning lady who'd arrived at the wrong time. "I'm sorry," I managed to say, straightening up slowly because my back was killing me after the trip. "Artie called me on Tuesday and said the party was today, Saturday." I thought, No, Jessica interrupted, shaking her head with that exaggerated patience adults use with slow children. "The family party was yesterday, Friday. Today, Just two of his friends from school came over, but they've already left. It's all over. But I tried to explain, but Artie cut me off. Look, Mom, you're here now. You can stay tonight, but you have to head back first thing in the morning, okay? Ethan has karate lessons, and we have plans. You can stay tonight. As if he were doing me a huge favor. As if sleeping one night in the house I helped pay for was a handout I should be grateful for on my knees. Where will I sleep? I asked, because I'd already noticed there was no space for me in the living room. Everything was perfect, tidy, with no room for an old woman with a suitcase who'd come to bother them. In the storage room, Jessica said. There's a cot in there. It's not very comfortable, but it's just for one night, right? The storage room, where they kept the brooms, the detergents, and the things they no longer used. That's where I, Ethan's grandmother, Artie's mother, the woman who had sacrificed 20 years raising this ungrateful son, was going to spend the night. Okay, I said, because what else could I say? Because when you're broken on the inside, you have no strength left to fight. Jessica led me to the back of the house, past the kitchen where the remnants of a party I hadn't experienced lay scattered. Dirty plates with pieces of cake, deflated balloons, crumpled napkins. On the fridge, I saw new photos of Ethan blowing out his candles. Surrounded by smiling children and adults who were not me, the storage room was exactly what I expected. An old stained mattress on a rusty metal frame. A small window that looked out onto the gas tank. Cardboard boxes piled to the ceiling with things that no longer served a purpose. The air smelled of dampness and bleach. Here are some clean sheets, Jessica said, pointing to a pile on a broken plastic chair. And the guest bathroom is next door. Try not to make too much noise because Ethan is going to bed soon. When she left and closed the door, I sat on the edge of the mattress and took the stuffed dinosaur out of my suitcase. I unwrapped it slowly, touching the little red bow I had saved so lovingly. It was a green dinosaur with big eyes and an embroidered smile. On its chest was a heart that said, "I love you so much." I hugged it to my chest, and for the first time all day, I cried. I cried silently, biting my shawl so they wouldn't hear me. I cried for the $200 I spent on the trip. I cried for Robert's earrings, which I would never get back. I cried for my grandson who had looked at me like a stranger. I cried for my son who treated me like an annoying burden. But most of all, I cried for myself, for the woman who had been foolish enough to believe that love could be bought with sacrifices. For the grandmother who had traveled for 2 days to hug a grandson who didn't even seem to know her. Outside, in the yard, I heard laughter. Artie was talking to someone on the phone. Yeah, man, my mom just showed up out of nowhere. I don't know what's wrong with her. She's getting old, you know. She should be thinking about getting into assisted living, not dragging herself across the country. His words stabbed me. Dragging herself. That's what he thought of me. An old woman dragging herself around, who didn't know when she wasn't wanted. That night, I couldn't sleep for more than an hour at a time. The mattress had springs that dug into my ribs, and every time I moved, it made a rusty metal sound that embarrassed me, because I thought I would wake the whole house. But what hurt more than the physical discomfort was realizing that no one had asked me if I was hungry, if I needed anything, if I was okay after the trip. At 9 o'clock, I heard someone shout, "Dinner's ready." I waited a few minutes thinking maybe they would come get me, but no one came. I stayed sitting on the edge of the mattress, listening to the clatter of plates and silverware, laughter, conversations that didn't include me. It smelled of roasted chicken and mashed potatoes. My stomach rumbled because the only thing I had eaten all day were the dry sandwiches from the bus. Around 10, when everything had gone quiet, I slipped out of the storage room and went to the kitchen. Very carefully, so as not to make a sound, I opened the refrigerator. There were leftovers of the chicken, but they were in a glass container covered with foil that had, "For tomorrow, do not touch," written on it. I found a piece of bread, a bit hard, and a little strawberry jam in a nearly empty jar. I sat at the kitchen table to eat my bread and jam, feeling like a thief in my own family. Every bite tasted of humiliation, but my hunger was stronger than my pride. While I ate, I looked out the window and saw deflated balloons scattered on the backyard lawn and dirty paper plates. In one corner was the broken shell of a piñata, a brightly colored Spider-Man that had spilled its candy all over the ground. I imagined Ethan laughing as he hit it with a stick, surrounded by other children screaming with excitement. A whole party that had happened without me. On the fridge, held by magnets, were new photos from yesterday. Ethan with his birthday crown, Artie holding him up, Jessica kissing his forehead. A photo where all the guests were singing happy birthday. Another where my grandson was cutting the cake, which was Spider-Man themed, his favorite cartoon. No one was missing from any photo. In all of them, they looked complete, happy, perfect. Without me. I went back to the storage room and lay down fully dressed, hugging the stuffed dinosaur. My eyes were dry by then, as if my body had decided that tears were a luxury I could no longer afford. The night was eternal. I heard when Jessica and Artie went to bed, when they locked their door, when they turned on the air conditioning that drifted into my room like a whisper of a comfortable life I didn't deserve to share. Around 3 a.m, I got up to use the bathroom. I walked barefoot down the hall, trying not to step too heavily. As I passed through the living room, I saw that Jessica had left her cell phone on the coffee table. The screen lit up with a notification from a group chat. I didn't want to look. I really didn't. But something stronger than my manners made me lean closer. It was a group called The Family Chat. I saw the names. Artie, Jess, Jessica's mom, Artie's siblings, even my other grandchildren who live in San Diego. Everyone but me. The last messages were from yesterday. Jessica. Artie's mom just showed up. Artie. Jesus, I thought she was going to stay home. Artie's sister. You didn't tell her it was a joke? Artie. I did, but she didn't believe me. You know how dramatic she gets. Jessica's mom. Oh, how awkward. Is she leaving tomorrow? Jessica. I hope so. Ethan doesn't even notice her, and I feel bad seeing her looking all sad. I read those messages 3 times, as if my brain refused to process what I was seeing. They hadn't just planned to exclude me from the party. They were also making fun of me in their messages, treating me like a burden, like a problem that needed to be solved as quickly as possible. You know how dramatic she gets. Ethan doesn't even notice her. I feel bad seeing her looking all sad. I went back to the storage room with my legs shaking. I lay on my back, staring at the damp-stained ceiling, and for the first time in my life, I felt something like hatred, not for them, for myself, for being such a damn fool, for believing sacrifices turned into love, for thinking that giving everything meant getting something back. Sunday morning was gray, with that kind of Chicago weather that seems sad from the get-go. I heard Artie get up around 8, but he didn't come looking for me. At 9, Jessica started making noise in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for her perfect family. I stayed in the room until 10, waiting for someone to knock on the door and invite me for breakfast, but no one did. I finally came out, showered and dressed in my clean clothes, carrying my suitcase. I found Artie sitting at the dining room table, eating eggs and sausage, and reading the news on his phone. Ethan was next to him, with a plate of pancakes and a glass of chocolate milk in a Pokemon cup. Good morning, I said. Morning, Mom, Artie replied without looking up from his phone. Are you leaving already? Are you leaving already? As if I'd been in the way from the moment I arrived. As if my departure was a relief for everyone. Yes, honey. My bus leaves at noon. Okay. Jess packed you something for the road. Jessica came out of the kitchen with a plastic grocery bag. Inside were 2 sandwiches wrapped in napkins and a bottle of water. Here you go, Mrs. Sanchez. So you don't have to spend money at the station. She handed me the bag with that fake smile she had perfected over the 5 years she'd been married to my son. A smile that said, "Aren't I nice?" but whose eyes screamed, "Get out already." Thank you, dear. I approached Ethan, who was focused on his pancakes as if they were the most interesting thing in the world. My beautiful grandson, I said, crouching down to his level. I'm leaving now. Can I have a hug? Ethan looked up for the first time since I arrived. His dark eyes, which were identical to mine, looked at me with an indifference that broke my heart. I can't, Grandma. Mom says I'm not supposed to hug people I don't know very well. People I don't know very well. His own grandmother was a person he didn't know very well. But I'm your grandma, my love. Your dad's mom. Yeah, I know. But you almost never visit. You almost never visit. As if it were my fault. as if I hadn't tried to visit them hundreds of times, only to be told they were busy, that it was a bad time, that maybe some other day. "Well, sweetie," I said, swallowing the lump in my throat, "I brought you something." I took the stuffed dinosaur out of my bag. I had rewrapped it, but it didn't look as nice anymore. The cellophane was wrinkled, and the little red bow had come undone during the night. "It's a dinosaur, for you." Ethan took it without emotion, looked at it for 2 seconds, and set it on the table next to his plate. "Thanks," he said, but it sounded like when kids say thank you because they're forced to, not because they feel it. "Aren't you going to hug it?" I asked. "It has a heart that says, 'I love you so much.'" "Later. I'm eating right now." Later. I knew there would be no later. I knew that dinosaur would end up at the bottom of a drawer, along with other forgotten gifts from distant relatives. Artie got up from the table and walked me to the door. We didn't say anything on the way. When we reached the front yard, where I was going to wait for the taxi, he finally spoke. "Mom, you're getting older. You should be thinking about more practical things than wasting money on trips. That $200 you spent could have been used for something useful." "Like what, honey?" "I don't know. Medicine, food, repairs for your apartment, old people things." Old people things? As if at 63, I no longer had the right to want to hug my grandson, as if love were a luxury that older people couldn't afford. The taxi arrived 5 minutes later. The driver got out to help me with my suitcase. Artie stood on the sidewalk, his hands in his pockets. "Take care, Mom," he said as I was getting into the taxi. "And next time, call before you come. Next time." As if there would be a next time after this. As if I hadn't just understood that I was no longer welcome in the life I helped build. The trip back was the longest of my life, 18 hours in the same bus seat, but now I was not the woman full of hope who had left New York City 3 days earlier. I was a broken, empty woman, carrying a suitcase with dirty clothes and a shattered heart. For the first 2 hours, I tried not to think. I focused on the landscape passing by the window, on the small towns where people got on and off with their grocery bags and sleeping children in their arms. Normal families who probably did celebrate birthdays together, who probably did miss each other when one traveled far away. But my mind wouldn't leave me alone. Again and again the images returned. Artie's annoyed face at his door, Ethan's indifferent eyes, the messages from the family chat where they called me dramatic. "Ethan doesn't even notice her." Those words hurt more than all the others combined. At the Cleveland bus station, during a 20-minute stop, an older woman sat down next to me. She had perfectly coiffed white hair and carried a woven bag full of homemade candies. "Heading to New York, dear?" she asked with the kindness that only people who have lived a lot possess. "Yes, ma'am. Going home." "And how was your trip? Visiting family?" The simple question broke me inside. I was quiet for a few seconds, feeling the lump grow in my throat. "I went to see my grandson," I managed to say. "It was his birthday." "How lovely. I'm sure they welcomed you with open arms." I didn't know what to say. I couldn't tell this kind stranger that my own family had treated me like a nuisance, that I had traveled for 2 days only to be given the scraps of their love. "Yes," I lied. "It was very lovely. Grandchildren are a joy in our old age, aren't they?" She went on. "I have 5. And every time I go to see them, it's like Christmas. They fight over who gets to hug me first. They fight over who gets to hug her first. I couldn't even get my only grandson to look me in the eye. When I arrived at Port Authority, it was 9 at night. New York City greeted me with its polluted air, its neon lights, and the constant noise of cars and buses. I took the subway to Astoria, carrying my suitcase as if it weighed 100 pounds, though it only held the same clothes I had left with. My apartment was waiting for me just as it always was. Small, damp, silent. But now it felt different, as if it had grown during my absence, as if the walls had stretched to make me feel even more alone. I turned on the light in the entryway, and the first thing I saw was the kitchen table, where I'd left the envelope with the money I had left over from the trip, $50. That was all I had until my next check. I sat down in my green plastic chair and, for the first time since leaving Chicago, I cried my heart out. I cried like I hadn't cried since Robert died. I cried until I ran out of tears and was left with only those dry sobs that ache in your chest like a smoker's cough. The next day, Monday, I woke up with a swollen face and a headache pounding in my temples. I didn't want to get up, but hunger forced me into the kitchen. I opened the fridge and was met with reality. 1 egg, half a tomato that was going soft, a hard tortilla from last Friday, and a small piece of cheese that smelled funny. I made a fried egg with the tomato and ate it with the hard tortilla, sitting at the table where I kept all the photos of my family. Artie as a baby in my arms, Artie on his graduation day, Artie on his wedding day, with Jessica smiling and me in my navy blue dress standing beside them, Ethan when he was born, tiny and pink, asleep in his hospital bassinet. As I chewed my sad breakfast, I stared at those photos. In all of them, there was happiness. In all of them, we looked like a real family. When had it all changed? When had I gone from being the beloved mom to the annoying burden? I remembered when Artie was little and got sick. I would stay up all night, putting damp cloths on his forehead, giving him chamomile tea, holding him when he had nightmares. I never complained. I never told him I was tired or needed to sleep. For me, taking care of him was the most natural thing in the world. I remembered when he went to a private high school, one of those with fancy uniforms and tuition fees that terrified me. I worked in a garment factory, 12 hours a day, to pay for his education. I would come home with my fingers swollen from sewing, but when he showed me his grades and said, "Thanks, Mom," all the exhaustion would melt away. I remembered the day he asked to borrow money for the down payment on his house in Chicago. "It's an investment, Mom," he had said. "When the house appreciates, I'll pay you back with interest." I took out the $50,000 I had saved from my severance package at the factory. My entire life savings. I gave it to him without a second thought, because it was for my son, so he could have a better future. The interest never came. The money was never returned. And when I asked about it, he said, "Oh, Mom, that's just between family. Don't you love me?" Yes, I loved him. I still love him. But now I understood there was a difference between loving someone and letting them walk all over you in the name of love. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Hello? Is this Mrs. Margaret Sanchez?" "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Carmen Rodriguez. I'm a colleague of your son, Artie. He gave me your number because we need to check a reference for a work matter." The call seemed strange, but I said I could help. "Ma'am, the thing is, your son has been borrowing money from several people at the office. He says it's for a medical emergency for you, that you need an urgent surgery and can't afford it." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. An urgent surgery. Medical emergency. "Ma'am, are you in poor health?" Carmen continued. No, ma'am, I'm fine. I don't have any illness." "Oh," there was an awkward silence. "Well, it's just that we found it odd, because your son also told us that you live in a very expensive nursing home and that he has to pay the monthly fees. That's why several of us have lent him money. A nursing home. A medical emergency. My son was using my name to scam his co-workers. He was inventing lies about my health, about my situation, to get money that he was probably spending on himself." "Mrs. Rodriguez," I said, in the calmest voice I could manage, "my son is lying to you. I live in my own apartment. I'm healthy, and I don't need any surgery. And I definitely do not live in a nursing home." There was another long silence. "Oh my God," Carmen whispered. "So, he's been scamming us?" "I'm afraid so, ma'am." When I hung up, I sat in my chair, trembling with rage. He hadn't just humiliated me at his house. He hadn't just treated me like a nuisance. He was also using my name to steal. He was making me sick in false stories, putting me in an imaginary nursing home, inventing surgeries that didn't exist, all to get money from innocent people. In that moment, something inside me changed. Something that had been dormant for years, crushed by so much giving without receiving, so much forgiving without being respected, so much loving without being valued. For the first time in my life, I felt something like dignity awaken in my chest, like a small but real flame. I picked up my phone and dialed Artie's number. It rang 4 times before he answered. "Hello, Mom. What's up?" "Artie, I need to talk to you. I'm busy right now. Can it wait?" "No, honey. It's important." I just got a call from a Carmen Rodriguez. There was a silence. A silence that confirmed everything. I don't know what you're talking about, Mom. Yes, you do, Artie. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You're telling your colleagues that I'm sick, that I live in a nursing home, that you need money for my surgeries. Mom, I'm hanging up, Artie, but I want you to know something. It's over. You're done using my name to lie. You're done treating me like a nuisance. And I'm done letting all of this happen without saying a word. Mom, you're overreacting. No, honey. For the first time in my life, I'm not overreacting. For the first time, I'm seeing things as they are. I hung up the phone and sat there, my heart pounding so loudly it echoed in the silence of my apartment. I had started something. I didn't know what, but it had begun. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in weeks, as if my body understood that something had changed, that it no longer had to carry the weight of guilt that wasn't mine. I woke up at 6 a.m. with a strange feeling in my chest. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it wasn't that heavy sadness that had followed me since the trip to Chicago either. It was something like calm. I got up, took a cold shower because the water heater had been broken for 2 months, and dressed in my denim skirt and my white cotton blouse. The same clothes I wore to the market, but now they felt different. Like a uniform for the new Margaret that was being born. I ate my usual egg for breakfast, but this time I didn't look at the family photos. I turned them all face down. I didn't want to see smiling faces that reminded me of times that maybe were never as happy as I thought. At 9 o'clock sharp, I took the subway to Manhattan. I had to do something I'd been putting off for years, something Artie had always told me wasn't necessary, that he would take care of everything, that I shouldn't complicate my life. I arrived at the Chase Bank on Park Avenue, an elegant place, with marble floors and employees in suits who spoke in hushed tones as if they were in a church. I sat in the waiting area, between executives checking their phones and well-dressed women who smelled of expensive perfume. When it was my turn, a young woman helped me from behind a glass desk. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you?" "I want to open a savings account," I said. "Just for me. In my name only." "Perfect. Will you be transferring funds from an existing account?" "No, dear. I'm starting from scratch. I filled out all the paperwork in my elementary school handwriting, the kind I learned when teachers would rap your knuckles with a ruler if your letters weren't straight. I wrote my address, my phone number, my date of birth, April 15th, 1961. I signed with the full name I hadn't used in years, Margaret Sanchez. Not Artie's mom, not Ethan's grandma, Margaret. I deposited the $50 I had left from the trip. It was ridiculous, I knew. $50 was nothing. But when the teller handed me my new shiny blue card, with my name engraved in silver letters, I felt like I had won the lottery. "Your account is now active, Mrs. Sanchez," she said. "Is there anything else?" "Yes, dear. I'd like to ask about loans for senior citizens." She explained that there were special loans for retirees, with low interest rates and flexible payments. Nothing life-changing, but enough to cover emergencies or small projects. I took all the brochures and stuffed them in my bag as if they were important documents. After leaving the bank, I walked through Midtown without a destination. It was Tuesday morning, and the streets were full of office workers drinking coffee from paper cups, women pushing strollers that cost more than my rent for 6 months, and executives talking on the phone in languages I didn't understand. I sat on a bench in Central Park, under a tree that provided good shade. I took out my cell phone and dialed a number I had saved 2 years ago but had never used. "Hello? Helen? It's Margaret. We met at the health clinic." "Oh, Margaret! What a surprise! How are you, neighbor?" Helen Vance was a woman my age whom I had met while we were both waiting in line for the free medical clinic. She had been widowed 3 years before me, but unlike me, she had decided never to depend on anyone else for her happiness. She had a small, home-cooked meal business that she ran from her apartment in the West Village. "I'm well, Helen. Do you remember you once told me about your food business?" "Of course. Why? Do you think you could teach me? I'd like to start something like that." "Wow, are you serious?" "Of course. When do you want to start? Is today too soon?" Helen laughed with the kind of hearty laugh that only comes when a woman has learned that life can be fun after 60. "Not at all. Come over at 2. I'll teach you how to make my specialty. 3-bean chili. It sells like hotcakes in the office buildings. I hung up and sat on the bench, watching people pass by. For the first time in years, I had made a plan that didn't involve my family. I had made a decision just for me, thinking only about what I wanted to do. At 2 o'clock sharp, I was ringing the doorbell of Helen's apartment in an old but well-maintained building on a quiet street. She opened the door wearing an apron covered in flour and a smile that reminded me why I had liked her from day one. "Come on in, neighbor. I've got everything ready to go." Her kitchen was small but perfectly organized. She had plastic containers labeled with different types of spices, herbs stored in glass jars, and a giant stockpot that took up 2 burners on the stove. "Look, Margaret," she said as she washed her hands, "the secret to this business isn't cooking fancy. It's cooking delicious, fast, and cheap. Office workers don't want gourmet. They want something that tastes like their mom's cooking, but without the work of making it themselves." For the next 4 hours, Helen taught me everything she had learned in 2 years of business. How to calculate portions to avoid wasting ingredients. How to make cornbread that wasn't dry. How to make a chili that was flavorful but wouldn't burn people's mouths off. How to package the food so it arrived hot and presentable. But more importantly, she taught me something I didn't expect. How to feel useful again. "You know what the best part of this job is?" she said as we ladled chili into containers. "Every dollar you earn is yours. No one can take it from you. No one can steal it. No one can tell you how to spend it. No one can steal it." Those words were a revelation. For years, all my money had been our money. Robert's pension was for household expenses. My part-time jobs were to help with the bills. I had never had money that was entirely my own, over which I had full control. "Helen," I said, "can I ask you something personal?" "Of course, neighbor. How did you know you had to start over? How did you know you could do it alone?" Helen stopped packing and looked at me with eyes that had seen much suffering but had chosen not to dwell on it. "When my Michael died, my kids wanted me to move in with them. 'You can't be alone anymore, Mom,' they'd say. 'It's dangerous. It's sad. It's unnecessary.' But I realized that for them, taking care of me meant making decisions for me. What I ate, what time I went to bed, who I talked to, what I watched on TV. And what did you do? I told them I loved them very much, but that I needed to try to be happy on my own. That if I failed, they would be there to help me, but that I had the right to try. Were they angry? At first, yes. They thought I was crazy, that I would starve or get mugged. But when they saw that I was not only surviving, but that I was happier than when I was living and waiting for them to visit, they didn't say anything more. That evening, I returned to my apartment with my hands smelling of cumin and chili powder, carrying a bag with 2 containers of chili that Helen had given me. But more importantly, I returned with something I hadn't felt in years: excitement for the next day. For the first time in a long time, I had something to look forward to that didn't depend on Artie's calls or visits that never came. I had a plan. I had a new friend. I had a bank account with my name on it. That night, as I was heating up one of Helen's chili portions for dinner, my phone rang. It was Artie. I stared at the screen for 5 rings before deciding what to do. Before, I would have answered on the first ring, my heart racing, thinking maybe he needed me, maybe something bad had happened, maybe he was finally going to apologize. This time, I let it ring until it went to voicemail. He called back immediately. I let it ring again. On the 3rd call, I answered. "Hello? Finally. Mom, why weren't you answering? I thought something happened to you." "I was busy, honey." "Busy with what? Watching your stories?" "No, Artie. Busy with my life." There was a silence, as if he couldn't comprehend what it could mean for his mother to have a life independent of him. "Hey, Mom, about the other day, I think you misunderstood things. I've never said anything bad about you at work. Artie, I don't want to talk about that anymore." "What do you mean you don't want to talk about it? I'm your son. We have to clear up this misunderstanding." "It's not a misunderstanding, honey, and we don't have to clear up anything. You have to fix what you did." "Mom, don't be so dramatic." "I'm not being dramatic anymore, Artie. I'm not anything you say I am anymore. Now I am who I decide to be." "What's wrong with you? You're acting really weird." "What's wrong with me is that I turned 63 and finally understood that I have a right to be respected. including by my own son. Mom, take care, honey. When you want to talk like a grown-up, give me a call. I hung up the phone and stood there in my kitchen, trembling, but not with fear, with power. For the first time in my life, I had hung up on my son. For the first time, I had set boundaries. And the world hadn't ended. In fact, it felt like it was just beginning. The next few days passed like a movie in fast forward. Artie called me 6 more times, but I only answered twice. Both times, when he started with his justifications and his, "Mom, you don't understand," I simply said, "When you're ready to talk with respect, call me back," and hung up. Helen and I started working together 3 days a week. I would arrive at her place at 7 in the morning, and together we would prepare chili, quesadillas, and fresh lemonade to sell at the office buildings in Midtown. At first, I was shy about knocking on doors and offering food, but Helen taught me there was nothing to be ashamed of. "Look, Margaret," she would say when I hesitated, "we're not begging for handouts. We're offering something good, at a good price, made with love. People need to eat, and we know how to cook. It's a fair exchange." In my first week, I earned $380. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was mine. Every bill that satisfied customers gave me went straight into my new bank account, and every dollar I deposited made me feel stronger, more independent. On the Friday of that first week, while I was counting the change I had made selling quesadillas at an accounting firm, my phone rang. This time it wasn't Artie. It was Jessica. "Mrs. Sanchez. Good afternoon." "Good afternoon, dear. I'm sorry to bother you, but I need to talk to you. It's about Artie." My blood ran cold. Had something happened to him? As angry as I was, he was still my son. "What happened? Is he okay?" "Yes, he's physically fine, but can we talk? He's been so distraught since you two argued, and I don't know what to do with him." "Tell me, Jessica." "It's just, well, I didn't know about the money he borrowed from his colleagues. He told me it was a bonus he was getting from the company. When I found out the truth, I was so ashamed, Mrs. Sanchez. So ashamed." Her voice sounded sincere. For the first time since I'd known her, Jessica wasn't speaking to me with that forced politeness she used when she wanted to get rid of me. "And has he paid those people back?" "He's trying, but it's about $15,000 in total. He says you won't answer his calls, that you're very angry with him, and that he doesn't know how to apologize." $15,000. My son had scammed $15,000 using lies about my health. "Jessica, can I ask you something?" "Of course, Mrs. Sanchez." "Did you know that Ethan's party was on Friday when I arrived on Saturday?" There was a long silence. So long I thought the call had dropped. "Yes," she finally whispered. "Yes, I knew. And why didn't you tell me the truth when I asked on the phone?" Because Artie said you would get really dramatic, that you would make a scene, that it was better for you to find out when you were already here so you couldn't cancel the trip and throw one of your fits." Your fits. That's what they called my pain. My need to be included in my grandson's life. Fits. "And you were okay with that, Jessica?" Another silence. "No, Mrs. Sanchez. I wasn't okay with it. But Artie can be very, very convincing when he wants to be. And I just didn't want any trouble at home. And what do you want now, dear? For you to talk to us. Both of us. Artie wants to apologize in person, and I also want to apologize. For treating you poorly, for not defending you, for everything." The offer took me by surprise. I had expected more aggressive calls, more reproaches, more attempts to make me feel guilty. I hadn't expected an apology. "When? Tomorrow afternoon? We can take a bus and be at your place around 4. "No," I said immediately. "Don't come to my apartment." "Then where?" I thought quickly. I needed a neutral place, where I would feel comfortable, where I could leave if things got ugly. "At the diner by the Roosevelt Avenue subway station. We'll meet there at 5. "Okay, Mrs. Sanchez, we'll be there." When I hung up, I sat in my green plastic chair and tried to process what had just happened. My daughter-in-law, who had treated me like an obstacle for 5 years, was asking for my forgiveness. My son, who had humiliated me in his own home, wanted to see me to apologize. Part of me was thrilled. the part that had been waiting for years for them to acknowledge everything I had done for them, to value my sacrifices, to ask for forgiveness for their slights. But another part of me, a new part that had started to grow since the day I opened my bank account, told me to be careful. That apologies didn't mean real change. That maybe they just wanted to calm me down to go back to how things were before. That night, I talked to Helen. I told her everything. The trip to Chicago, the humiliation, the stolen money, Jessica's call. "And what are you going to do, neighbor?" she asked as we drank chamomile tea in her kitchen. "I don't know, Helen. Part of me wants to believe they'll change, that they finally get it. And the other part? The other part thinks they just want me to go back to being the convenient mom, the one who gives money when they need it, the one who doesn't complain when they treat her badly, the one who always forgives everything." Helen nodded. "You know what I'm going to tell you? Go to that meeting, but go as the new Margaret, not the old one. Go knowing what you're willing to accept and what you're not. And if you don't like what you hear, you get up and leave. It's that simple. And what if they really want to change? Then they'll have to prove it with actions, not words. Pretty words don't erase years of mistreatment, Margaret. Real changes do." On Saturday, I arrived at the diner 20 minutes early. It was a small place, with plastic booths and classic rock playing softly in the background. I ordered a black coffee and sat at a table near the window, where I could see the subway entrance. At 5 o'clock sharp, I saw Artie and Jessica arrive. They were both dressed up, like they were going to church or an important meeting. Artie was wearing a white button-down shirt and dress pants. Jessica wore a navy blue dress and heels. They looked nervous, out of place, as if they weren't used to this kind of place. When they saw me, Artie raised his hand to wave. I didn't wave back. I just watched them approach the table with the somber expressions people wear at funerals. "Hi, Mom," Artie said when he reached the table. His voice sounded different, softer, less sure of itself. "Hello," I replied without standing up, without smiling, without making any gesture to put them at ease. They sat down across from me. Jessica ordered a coffee and Artie a Coke. No one spoke for the first 5 minutes. There was only the sound of the music and the traffic on the avenue outside. Finally, Artie broke the silence. "Mom, I came to say I'm sorry." I looked him in the eyes without responding. I waited for him to continue. "I was terrible to you. At the house, about the party with the money. It was all wrong." "What specifically was wrong, Artie?" The question threw him off. He expected me to say, "Oh, honey, don't worry, I'm over it." He didn't expect me to ask for details. "Well, everything. Not telling you the truth about the party. Treating you badly when you arrived. Not inviting you to dinner. And what else? What else what? What else was wrong, Artie? Because so far you've only mentioned 3 days. But I've spent 5 years feeling like a stranger in your family." Jessica intervened. "Mrs. Sanchez, I want to apologize too. I've treated you poorly. I haven't made you feel welcome in our home. I haven't defended your place as Ethan's grandmother." Her words sounded rehearsed, but there was something sincere in her tone. "So why now?" I asked them. "Why do you care about my feelings now?" Artie and Jessica looked at each other. Because Ethan has been asking about you," Jessica said. "Ever since you left, he asks why his grandma looked sad, why she didn't stay longer, why she doesn't come back. And because I realize that you're my mom," Artie added, "and that I have no right to treat you the way I have." I took a sip of my coffee and looked at them for a long moment. I saw my son, this 35-year-old man who still expected his mother to forgive everything without question. I saw my daughter-in-law, who had learned to treat me badly because her husband had taught her it was normal. "You know what?" I said finally. "I believe that you feel bad. I believe you realize you were awful to me, but I don't believe you're going to change." "Mom, of course we'll change," Artie insisted. "I promise. Like when you promised to pay me back the $50,000 I lent you for the house? Like when you promised you'd invite me over more often? Like when you promised we'd be a close family?" Artie lowered his head. "This is different, Mom." "No, honey, this is the same. You feel guilty right now, but in a month, you'll be back to your old selves. And I won't be back to my old self." I stood up from the table and took out a $5 bill to pay for my coffee. "Margaret, wait," Jessica said. What can we do to make you forgive us? It's not about forgiveness, Jessica. It's about respect. And respect isn't asked for, it's earned. And it's proven with actions, not words. What kind of actions? Artie asked. You'll see, honey. If you really want to change, you'll see. I walked out of the diner and headed for the subway station. As I went down the stairs, I heard Artie yelling from the street. Mom, don't just walk away like that. But I didn't look back. For the first time in my life, I was the one walking away, leaving them with unfinished sentences. After that meeting in the diner, something changed in the way I walked. Literally. Helen told me so 3 days later when I arrived at her apartment to prepare the day's meals. You know something, Margaret. You don't walk like you used to. How did I walk before? I asked, tying on my apron. Like you were apologizing for existing. Now you walk like you have a right to be here. She was right. I'd noticed it myself when I caught my reflection in the glass of the office buildings where we sold our food. I no longer walked with my shoulders slumped. I no longer kept my eyes on the ground. I no longer made myself small so as not to be a bother. My business with Helen began to grow. Clients recommended us to their coworkers, and soon we were selling in 4 different buildings. I had my own route. The accounting firm on Madison Avenue, the advertising agency on 42nd Street, and 2 medical offices in the Upper East Side. In 3 weeks, I had $700 in my bank account. It was more money than I'd had all to myself in years. But more important than the money was the feeling that I had earned every single dollar with my own work, my own effort, my own 2 hands. One afternoon, as I was counting my earnings on my kitchen table, the phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. Hello? Mrs. Margaret Sanchez? Yes, this is she. This is Ms. Patricia Vega, from the Illinois Department of Children and Family Services. I'm calling you regarding a situation with your grandson, Ethan. My blood ran cold. Had something happened to him? Was he sick? In an accident? What happened to my grandson? Please calm down, ma'am. Ethan is physically fine, but we are investigating an anonymous report concerning child neglect. Neglect? What are you talking about? Someone reported that the child has been left home alone for extended periods, that he is not receiving adequate medical attention, and that there are instances of domestic disputes in the home. We need to verify this information, and part of our protocol is to contact close relatives. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ethan, home alone? Domestic disputes. Who made the report? It's anonymous, ma'am. But we need you to tell us about the family situation as you've observed it. I told her everything. The trip to Chicago. How they had treated me. Their indifference toward Ethan when I arrived. The lies about the party. I told her about the group chat where they made fun of me. About how Artie used my name to scam people. Have you observed any kind of mistreatment of the child? Not physical, ma'am. But I have seen him looking very down. Very serious for an 8-year-old boy. The last time I saw him, he wouldn't even hug me. He told me his mom said he shouldn't hug people he doesn't know well. And you are his grandmother? Yes, his paternal grandmother. But they've pushed me out of his life. The social worker took down my information and explained that they would be making a home visit in the next few days. She asked me to keep the information confidential and gave me her number in case I remembered anything else. When I hung up, I just sat in my chair, processing everything. Who could have made that report? Was it true? Or did someone just have a grudge against Artie? 2 days later, I had my answer. Helen and I were making chili in her kitchen when my phone rang. It was Artie, but this time his voice was frantic. Mom, I need your help. What happened, Artie? DCFS came to the house. They said someone reported that we're neglecting Ethan. It's a lie, Mom. It's a horrible lie. But they took Ethan. They put him in temporary foster care while they investigate. My heart broke. My grandson, confused and scared, in the hands of strangers. What do you need me to do? Talk to them. Tell them we're a normal family, that Ethan is well cared for, that there's no violence in our home. Artie, is any of what the report said true? Of course not, Mom. How can you even ask me that? Because I need to know the truth if I'm going to help you. There was a long silence. Okay, sometimes Jessica and I argue. Loudly. And yes, sometimes we've left Ethan alone for a little while when we have to go out. But it's not neglect, Mom. It's just life. How loudly do you argue? Well, we yell. Jessica sometimes throws things, but we've never, ever hit Ethan. And how long do you leave him alone for? 2 hours max. When we have work meetings or errands, he's old enough. 2 hours. An 8-year-old boy, home alone for 2 hours while his parents had errands. Artie, who do you think made the report? I don't know, Mom. Maybe a nosy neighbor. Or someone from my work who's mad about the money. Have you paid your coworkers back yet? I'm working on it, Mom. But with this DCFS thing, I can't think about anything else. Are you going to help me? I looked at Helen, who had been listening to the whole conversation. She gave me a look as if to say, think this through. Artie, I will help you. But on my terms. What terms? First, you give me the social worker's number so I can speak with her directly. Second, when you get Ethan back, I get to see him every 2 weeks, minimum. Third, you will never lie to me about anything ever again. Mom, but either you accept my conditions or you're on your own. You decide. Another long pause. Okay, Mom, I accept. That same afternoon, I spoke with Ms. Vega. I explained our family situation honestly, but I also confirmed that, despite the problems between us, I had never witnessed any physical abuse toward Ethan. Mrs. Sanchez, would you be willing to serve as a family support resource for the child? In cases like this, where there is mild neglect but not severe abuse, we can sometimes work with the extended family to create a safety plan. What does that mean? It means you could have regular visits with your grandson, supervise his well-being, and be a support figure while the parents receive family counseling. And if I see something is wrong, then you report it to us immediately. I agreed to be Ethan's family support. I signed papers, attended a meeting about children's rights, and was given an emergency number to report any issues. A week later, Ethan returned to his parents' home, but now I had a legal right to visit him every 2 weeks, and Artie and Jessica were required to attend mandatory family therapy. The first visit I made after this whole ordeal was completely different from the birthday trip. I arrived at their house by taxi, but this time Artie was waiting for me at the door. Hi, Mom. Thanks for coming. Hello, son. He invited me into the living room. Jessica came out of the kitchen wiping her hands, but this time she greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. Mrs. Sanchez, would you like some coffee? Yes, thank you, dear. Ethan was sitting on the couch watching cartoons. When he saw me, he got up and walked toward me. This time, he didn't hesitate. He hugged me. Hi, Grandma. Did you bring any dinosaurs? I laughed for the first time in weeks. No, sweetie. I brought something better. I took out 3 containers of my 3-bean chili that I had made especially for him. What's that? It's food your grandma makes. Want to try some? For the next 2 hours, we ate chili, played with his toy cars, and talked about everything. Ethan told me about school, his friends, and the cartoons he liked. I told him about my job selling food, about Helen, and about the customers who now knew me by name. Grandma, you have a job? Yes, sweetie. I work every day. And you like it? I like it very much. Because the money I earn is mine, and I can buy you dinosaurs whenever I want. Ethan laughed and hugged me tighter. When I was leaving, Artie walked me to the taxi. Mom, thank you. For helping us. For not abandoning us when we needed you most. I didn't do it for you, Artie. I did it for Ethan. I know, and I also know I have a lot to change. Then change it, son. For real this time. In the taxi on the way back to the bus station, I stared out the window at the streets of Chicago. The same city that had greeted me with humiliation 3 months earlier now felt different. Not because the city had changed. Because I had changed. I was no longer the woman who begged for love. I was the woman who demanded respect. I was no longer the grandmother who pleaded for scraps of attention. I was the grandmother who had legal rights to see her grandson. I was no longer the Margaret who apologized for existing. I was the Margaret who had learned her own worth. 6 months after everything I've just told you, I'm sitting in my kitchen, but it's no longer the same sad kitchen where I ate hard-boiled eggs and stale bread. Now it smells of cinnamon and brown sugar because Helen and I have expanded the business. We also sell homemade desserts, rice pudding, Jell-O salad, and my new specialty, key lime pie that sells out in the Midtown offices. I have $5,200 in my bank account. It's more money than I ever thought I could have just for myself. But the most important thing isn't the dollars. It's what they represent. My independence, my dignity, my ability to take care of myself without asking anyone for favors. The family photos are still on the kitchen table, but they don't hurt anymore. I look at them and remember the nice moments, yes. But I also remember the woman I used to be, the one who believed her value depended on how much she could give, how much she could sacrifice, how much she could endure without complaining. That woman is gone. Ethan comes to visit me every other weekend, as stipulated in the DCFS agreement. But now he also calls me on Wednesdays because he wants to, not because someone makes him. He tells me about school, his friends, the new cartoons he's watching, and I tell him about my customers, the new recipes I'm inventing, the interesting places I've discovered selling food around the city. Last week he said something that went straight to my heart. "Grandma, why did you almost never come to see us before?" "Because your parents used to tell me they were very busy, sweetie. But now you always come. Now I always come. I like it better this way. I like it better this way too. I like having a guaranteed place in my grandson's life. I like that my visits don't depend on Artie's mood or whether Jessica feels like having me over. I like that the state of Illinois recognizes my right to be a grandmother, even if it took my own family years to do the same." Artie and Jessica are still in family therapy. According to Ethan, they don't yell as much at home anymore, and they don't leave him alone when they go out. The therapist has taught them how to communicate better, and it seems they've finally understood that being parents means more than just providing food and shelter. Artie calls me every Sunday afternoon. Our conversations are different now. He doesn't ask me for money because he knows I'll say no. He doesn't dump his problems on me expecting me to solve them because he knows it's no longer my job to fix his life. We talk about normal things. The weather, the news, how Ethan is doing in school. 3 Sundays ago, he said something I never thought I'd hear from him. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, son." "How did you know you had to change? How did you know you deserved better?" The question took me by surprise. It was the first time Artie acknowledged that I had deserved better, that I had valid reasons for pulling away. It wasn't that I knew Artie. It was that I hit my limit. I got to the point where the pain didn't even hurt anymore, and that's when I realized something was very, very wrong. "And you don't regret it? Pulling away? Setting boundaries? What do you think? Do you think I should regret it?" There was a long pause. "No, Mom. I think you did the right thing. I think we needed you to put a stop to it." I've repeated those words to myself many times since then. We needed you to put a stop to it. My son had finally understood that boundaries aren't punishments. They are acts of self-love that end up benefiting everyone. Helen and I are no longer just business partners. We're real friends. The kind of friends who tell each other everything, who support each other on tough days, who celebrate small successes together. Last week she turned 67, and I threw her a small party in my apartment. 5 other women from the home cooking network we've built over these months came. It was the first time in years my home was filled with laughter that didn't depend on my family. Laughter from women who have lived a lot, lost a lot, but who have decided not to dwell in their pain. Women who have discovered that life after 60 can be the most honest and freeing chapter of all. One of them, a woman named Carmen, said something to me while we were washing dishes. "You know, Margaret, you've changed so much since I first met you. How have I changed? You used to look like you were asking for permission to exist. Now you look like you know you have a right to be here." She's right. I know now that I have a right to be here, a right to take up space, a right to have opinions, a right to say no when something doesn't work for me, a right to demand respect without having to earn it with sacrifices. Yesterday, Sunday, while I was baking key lime pies for the week, I reflected on everything that has happened since that terrible trip to Chicago. In 6 months, my life has completely changed. But it didn't change because my circumstances magically improved. It changed because I decided I deserved better and took the necessary actions to get it. No one came to rescue me. No one showed up offering me a better life. I rescued myself. I offered myself a better life. And I discovered I had the strength to do it all along. Now I understand that for years, I was waiting for my family to give me the place I deserved, when all along, The power to give it to myself was in my hands. I was waiting for them to recognize my worth, when what I needed to do was recognize it myself and act accordingly. The woman who traveled for 2 days on a bus to be humiliated at a child's party is gone. In her place is a woman who has her own business, her own bank account, her own friends, and her own plans for the future. Next month, Helen and I are going to rent a small commercial kitchen space in Long Island City to make our meals in a bigger space. We're going to hire 2 more women who are in the same situation we were. Older women who need an income and know how to cook with love. I also signed up for a baking class at the local community college. I want to learn new techniques, discover different recipes, and expand my repertoire beyond what I already know. For the first time in my life, I have plans that don't depend on anyone else. Plans I made thinking only of what I want, what makes me happy, what's best for me. And you know what the most beautiful part of all this is? I'm not 25 years old. I'm 63. And that doesn't limit me. On the contrary, it gives me an advantage that young people don't have. The experience of knowing you can survive the greatest losses and come out stronger on the other side. I learned that it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to set boundaries. It's never too late to demand respect. And it's never, ever too late to discover who you really are when you stop trying to be what others need you to be. If you're listening to this story and any part of it sounds familiar, if you've also given everything and received crumbs in return, if you've also begged for love where there is only indifference, I want you to know something very important. You don't have to live like that. It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how long you've been in that situation. It doesn't matter if people tell you, that's just how families are, or you have to put up with it because they're your blood. Your happiness matters. Your dignity matters. Your peace of mind matters. And you have the right to protect all of it, even if others don't like it. True love doesn't hurt. True love doesn't humiliate. True love doesn't make you feel small or insignificant. If what you call love is destroying you from the inside, then it isn't love. It's habit. It's manipulation. It's fear, but it's not love. It took me 63 years to understand this. You don't have to wait that long. Now I want to ask you something, and I want you to think about it carefully. Have you experienced something similar to what I've described? Do you know someone who is going through a similar situation? Tell me in the comments. Sometimes sharing our story is the first step to changing it. And if this story touched your heart, if you think someone else needs to hear it, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel, because messages like this need to reach everyone who doesn't yet know that they deserve better, that they deserve to be respected, that they deserve to be valued, that they deserve to be happy, without asking for permission.